Thank you, Chandra. My name is Ernie Niemi. I've been a natural resource economist in this area for about 35 years. And I want to talk a little bit about the economic stakes associated with what you've just been hearing about. And the economic issues, the top part of the slide really boil down to what Congressman DeFazio and the industry and many county commissioners talk about are the benefits. So that you get logs, that's really great for the mill owners. And it is a benefit, really is. It helps people who want to have housing and the like. When Peter DeFazio has talked about it and when he submitted his op-ed into the Register Guide, the first thing he talked about was timber jobs for rural timber-dependent communities. And I'm going to talk about that some. What we've heard that really tends to be driving this an awful lot, though, however, is timber revenue for the counties. And as Charlie just pointed out, that's a really difficult issue to get through because there are so many other options that the counties have or the state has to deal with this revenue issue. And unless you talk about all of them, then you're just taking everything off the table and talking about making logging solve the problem. Well, I don't have enough time to go into that, although I can talk about it later if you'd like to have some questions about it. I'm really going to talk about, though, the costs for the rest of us. We've known for decades that we get costs from logging. We get all sorts of costs. But one of the things that, coming out of the governor's process that Chandra talked about a little bit, is that the DeFazio bill would have 1.6 million acres, but the additional acres open to logging from what you see today is about 800,000, 900,000 acres. That would increase the annual timber cut by about 515 million board feet. And you would get 5,500 jobs for all of that. They would log all of those areas over about 25 years. They say, it's not clear that they would, but that's what you would get, 5,000 jobs. Well, down here, and I apologize for this, it's hard to see, but this comes from the Oregon Department of Employment. And what it shows is the average monthly job growth in the first part of the year, for each year, 2010, 11, 12, and 13. This year, every month, we're generating more than 4,000 new jobs. So that puts that in some sort of scale. Now, for the people who get those jobs, that's great. You know, and I'm not belittling that at all. But we're not talking about rescuing the O&C counties, pulling them out of the garbage because they're just about to be trash. That isn't the case. Even in 2011, we were generating almost 2,000 jobs. So what we're talking about now is every 5 weeks or so, we're generating as many new jobs in this state as we would get total from seeing all of that logging, all of those clear cuts, all of the effects that Josh and Chandra were talking about. But we're also going to see other jobs at risk. Right? People do not go to recreate in stumps. Sorry. You know, some people might, but I've never come across one, and I don't. People would like to fish. Some analysis that we did in the early 1990s was to show that the number of fishing jobs in this state was basically about the same number as the number of timber-dependent jobs, timber industry jobs. Timber industry jobs have gone down, fishing jobs have gone down, so I haven't done it recently. But you really are looking at, are you going to have fishing jobs or are you going to have stump jobs? You know, that's the choice that we're talking about here. It's not that somehow we can create all of these jobs and everything else is just fine. And then we have quality of life. Research has been conducted in the state about every 2 years. Asks people who move into Oregon and turn in their old driver's license and get a new Oregon driver's license, why did you come? A very high percentage of them say, I come for the quality of life. Oh, but didn't you come to get to work? Well, I'm actually going to take a pay cut to come to Oregon. Why? Because of the quality of life. Again, people don't come here to live next to stumps. You know, you're going to hear about that in a little bit. So the more that we destroy this, the more we are squeezing out of our economy the people who would come here, bring their incomes, bring their labor, bring their ability to spend, and create new jobs in this state. This is one of the primary drivers of economic growth across the United States. People want to live where they want to live, and then they find a job. As opposed to, they go to Pittsburgh or Atlanta or Houston to find a job and put up with a crappy quality of life. And then there's the cleanup tax. Right? If logging occurs up the Mackenzie, the water gets muddy, EWEB has to spend more money to get that mud out of the water, you all just got a tax. Money that you would have done something else with, you now are going to spend in order to clean up their mess. For the water, the T&E species, when you have more threatened and endangered species, more parts of the economy are constrained in what they want to do. Now, some of it is on timberland, okay, well they're creating the mess in the first place, but some of it is going to be people who want to do other things out on West Eugene or north of Eugene, whatever. More people are constrained in what they can do, and in effect end up paying an extra tax for the industry. Every one of those taxes takes up jobs. You say goodbye to them, it's gone. And then flooding and slides. Some of you were living here when several years ago with the big slides, killed 4 people, took out quite a few cars on the road over to Reedsport. Well, a lot of that comes from clear cuts. Now they don't call them clear cuts, they call them regeneration harvests, or maybe they have something new that they're going to call them, but they're clear cuts. You know, call them what they are. That's a tax. Every time that your house is flooded, because the river channel now has more of that dirt in them, raising the channel so the water goes out farther, places where it didn't go in the past. That's a tax on you. It takes jobs away from all of us. But here's another way to think about this. What is the value of what you get off of those lands? So you have this 1.6 million acres that's going to go into the trust, and somebody's got to buy it in effect. And this is really something new because the timber industry's never thought about having the opportunity to buy federal land. Well, now you start to see some of the information that comes out of there. What would they pay? What would the timber industry pay for the right to log on those lands? It's about $5,000 an acre. Now, a lot of people, that really comes as a surprise. They've got a lot of timber. It's really big trees. It's going to be $100,000 an acre. It's $5,000 an acre. And one of the big issues here is whether they're going to be able to actually export those logs. And if they can't export the logs, it's probably going to be less. Well, the legislation, as it's proposed, says you can't export the logs, but what happens? You have BLM timber comes in this side of the mill, private timber comes in this side of the mill, the private timber, you know, what happens to it? It ends up getting exported. Maybe it's had, you know, a little bit of cut on one side, 2 cuts, 3 cuts, 4 cuts, but it's basically exported. They can't do that, that probability value goes down. Well, over here, there are lots of things that we can't measure yet. The value of recreation, for example, the value of the linkages between logging and salmon. Salmon really do have a particular value here. There's evidence out there that if we can lose a salmon, if the salmon populations go down in this region, it's about $1,000 a fish. Those are pricey little suckers. But we have troubles measuring those. Over here in the water, lost water, dirty water. We know about the dirty water, about the lost water. Big trees, when the fog comes in, the fog condenses, that water drips down. You get an awful lot of water in the Coast Range through that process. If you log those trees, that fog just keeps right on going, gone. Especially in the summer, that water's not going to have fallen on the ground, gone into the aquifer, come back out in the stream. That's expensive. We're going to lose that. This is about $1,500 an acre here. Owl habitat, 1994, and all of this brouhaha was going on. Some economists out of Washington actually surveyed households across America. So it was across America. Do you care about spotted owls? I said, yeah, we do. Well, would you pony up some money in order to help? Yeah, I will. Not an awful lot, but you know, $1 here, $1 there, maybe $5 a year. But that's across 100 million households. It adds up an awful lot. And what people actually said, and the economists asked, well, gee, you know you're going to lose this timber. I want you to be clear. Is it owls versus timber? Yeah, I understand that. They put a value on the northern spotted owl habitat that was at least 3 to 4 times the value of the timber, and probably about 10 times that. People don't want to have these things go extinct on their watch. This is a legacy. Talk about a legacy value, legacy tree. This is the legacy we want to leave for our next generation. This is a killer right here. This is carbon. Trees out there, on federal lands out there, have among the highest ability to grab carbon dioxide out of the air and hold it in the trees, in the limbs, down in the soil. This is really big. I mean, this is sort of the Amazon of the temperate forests of the world, right here. Doesn't get any better than this. Scientists of Oregon State looked at 2 scenarios. What happens to the carbon that we have off of all of these lands through the end of the century? And in one of the scenarios, you allow industrial logging as is being proposed. The amount of carbon on those lands goes, eventually come back up, because eventually you cut it all. And some starts to go back. If you leave it, it's just almost a mirror image. It goes up and eventually comes back down. The difference between cutting and saving, cutting and conservation, is about 4 tons of carbon dioxide per acre per year. 4 tons of carbon dioxide per acre per year over the next 85 years. Well, so what? That carbon dioxide exacerbates climate change, which causes more damage. Economists have been, this is sort of an employment act for some economists, to try to quantify what is that damage. One of the estimates that's out there right now is $250 per ton. So 4 tons per year times $250 a ton is $1,000 a year for 85 years. $85,000 per acre for the carbon alone. Ah, but wait a minute, 250, I don't like that. What about smaller numbers? Okay, well, federal agencies, the Office of Management and Budget, went out and said, let's be really cautious. Let's look at all the literature, the ones that we can actually count, and not have anybody yell at us too much. And it's $44 to $83 per ton over the next through 2050. They haven't run it beyond that. And so when I ran it, I just stopped. And it ends up being $25,000 per ton. So you even take the low ball, get $25,000 per acre. Now, it doesn't have acidification of the oceans in this. This doesn't have you losing the ice caps. There are all sorts of things that aren't in here, and there's other evidence out here that ought to be $900 a ton. Right? Good grief, folks! This is why economists and scientists are pulling their hair out. This is really big, serious stuff. It takes only one storm. One storm come across us that's exacerbated because of climate change, or one drought in this state. And that thing is just, it's dishonest, basically, from an economic perspective. Okay, there is a report that's coming out tomorrow that I helped write. Actually, I wrote all of it. It's at pacificrivers.org. You can find it on their website. There's a Pacific Rivers Council help support me on all of this. If you have any questions that keeping you up on late at night, send them to me in the morning. And there's a web address. Thank you very much.